Hello, Internet. My name is Chamomile.
And I'm Requiem.
And it's a shame what happened to the Goblin Caravan there.
Yeah, I did not realize that unicorns were carnivorous.
Yeah, and I mean, mentioning the unicorns, I say it's a shame, but in retrospect, I guess it was like really obvious. Like they gathered up a bunch of dangerous monsters and forced them to fight each other to the death. So, like, obviously that was going to go wrong eventually.
Yeah.
It is too bad, though, because, the Goblin Caravan took us into the deeps of Arkansas, and I was kind of assuming that, okay, if they went from the shallows to the deeps, then eventually they'd go back to the shallows, right? They've probably got a route. Clearly that's not happening.
Yeah, we'll probably be fine. Let's just, we got to keep moving.
Right.
So this is going for edgy right off the bat.
Oh, yes. One of the things I like about Blasphemous is its grimdark tone. I do sometimes get the feeling that the creators might be trying to play it straight, which is not how I consume grimdark, but it's in the Dark Souls mold of being very vague about what exactly is going on, so it's very easy to sort of slap your own interpretation on it. For example, I don't think this was the creator's intent, but it's sufficiently vague that I can't say for sure. The divinity that they worship in this setting is called the Miracle. I do not think it is sapient.
Oh?
Yes. I think that in this world it is called Custodia, that people's guilt can magically manifest itself as different monsters and environmental effects and such, and that they have created a religion that is obsessed with this, but I do not believe that it is that the miracle actually has a will. I think people are anthropomorphizing a magical force of nature.
I like that idea. Have we talked about the meaning of the word grimdark?
I'm not sure if we have. I mean, I know we have, like, literally, but I don't know if we have on camera.
This is one of those things that Cam and I run into doing this podcast, is sometimes where we know we've talked about a subject, but we're not sure whether we've talked about it on camera or not.
I mean, if we have, it was definitely at least a season or two ago, so I don't think it's going to be a huge deal to rehash it real quick, just in case anyone is only watching us for Blasphemous.
So, Cam, when you say something as grimdark, what do you mean?
Okay. So the term grimdark, this is factually it originated from in the grim darkness of the far future there is only war, from clear back, I want to say maybe even first edition Warhammer 40k, but certainly third edition at the latest. So that's where the term comes from. Not everyone knows that, which I find kind of surprising, but it's true. When I think of grimdark, the elements of 40k that leap to my mind is a sort of parody vibe to it, where it is taking a dark, gritty, serious tone and aesthetic and playing it to such an extreme that it becomes a joke, where part of the joke is that the setting and narrative itself do not acknowledge the joke, right? If you put Groucho Marx glasses on the grimdark nature of the setting, then it's no longer quite grimdark anymore. Okay. Let's pay attention to your attack pattern. It is very simple, so...
Yeah, grimdark is one of those... It's folk terminology. It didn't, nobody came up with, a strict definition of it. It just kind of emerges out of the popular ether, which means that, there's not actually, a strict definition of it. It's sort of like the term Mary Sue, where, what does it mean for something to be a Mary Sue? Well, there's not, an actual, academic definition of it. When I use it, similar to Cam, you go back to Warhammer 40k, it's funny. It's dark to the point that you can't take it seriously. It's humorous. It's over the top.
Grimdark should never be concerned with feeling grounded or, plausible. It should not try to be, an exploration of the human condition under terrible circumstances or whatever.
It's like the Emperor, or I guess not the Emperor, since he's like in a coma. The Imperium destroys like billions of planets on a whim or something. It's dark to the point that it's impossible to take seriously. But there are other ways to define grimdark. One way would be that you occasionally see is grimdark is it's dark to the point where it's disengaging, where you just don't care. Like you cannot. It's not that it's funny; it's that it's just
right.
It's just too dark for you to invest yourself in this setting. I think Dragon Age 2 would be a good example of this type of grimdark.
And obviously, exactly, people's threshold for when it's too dark to engage with the setting is going to vary from person to person. But I think Dragon Age 2 does have that effect on a lot of people.
Yeah, like, when I played Dragon Age 2, it was like, I just did not care about the city. Everybody in the city is terrible. Every faction's terrible. Half my party is terrible. I only didn't kill Anders because I wanted the achievement. The Templars are awful, but the mages are awful, the Qunari are awful, the spirits are awful. And so I just I did not care, like, why do I want to save this city? The city is terrible and everybody in it is terrible. Some people will also point to Game of Thrones being this kind of grimdark. Some people found the darkness in Game of Thrones disengaging.
Yeah. I didn't feel that way personally. Game of Thrones, I feel like, did develop serious problems. Particularly the TV show in its 8th season is famous for them, but I thought that the series, even the books, had problems before that, but I never felt the level of darkness was that way, which is just an example of how the threshold for that kind of grimdark is going to be different for everyone.
And that kind of brings us to the third way to define grimdark, where something is grimdark, that just means, like, it's a very dark setting, and it doesn't mean that it's humorous or disengaging. Like, it just means it's a dark, particularly fantasy or science fiction setting, which I think Game of Thrones, potentially, if you use that more neutral definition of grimdark, I would definitely say it's like, oh yeah, it's a very dark fantasy setting. So,
and have you ever seen the Bright, Dark, and Noble Grim alignment chart?
I've not.
Okay, so by this definition of grimdark, the theory goes that grimdark is the chaotic evil of the chart, where noble versus grim refers to the ability of the characters to affect the world they're in. So a noble dark setting is one where the setting is bad, but the characters have the power to fix it. And then bright versus dark is what the setting is right now. So noble bright is the setting is already good, and the characters have the power to preserve it or make it even better. Star Trek is usually the given example. Grim bright sitcoms are often given as an example. The characters are essentially powerless to escape their situation, but their situation is mostly okay, so it's cool. And then, by this definition, though, a lot of people who describe themselves as grimdark writers, I was at a panel at the Salt Lake City Comic-Con a couple of years ago, back when conventions could happen. And, it was on grimdark writing, and the conclusion that most of the writers came to is that, because one of them had seen this alignment chart version of the definition, and the writers quickly came to the conclusion, like almost all of them, that they were actually all noble dark writers, and the panel had been mislabeled.
Yeah.
So, because, like, noble dark, there's something to be said for that, of, like, the world sucks, and the victory, that you can get over the darkness might even be kind of limited, but you can make things better. Like, there's something to be said for a story like that.
Yeah, like, I think Game of Thrones would fall into that, because, like, the characters do have agency and power in the world. Even when they're not successful, it doesn't feel like necessarily that the world is just designed in a way that they cannot change the world. It just feels like the circumstances of whatever specifically happened made it so their attempts failed. Like, Marjorie was, was trying to improve life for the common person, and she was in this conflict with Cersei, and she loses the conflict with Cersei. It didn't feel like, oh, well, it was impossible because the setup of the world is so, if you want to improve the world, you always lose. It's just like, within the conflict with Cersei, like, Marjorie was much better at playing the political game than Cersei, but Cersei was kind of an idiot and would always be willing to escalate it further than it should have gone. Like, Cersei was not good at the game, so her response to the game was to always flip the table over, regardless of the consequences. So, like, involving the sparrows, empowering them into a sort of faith militant was a very bad idea. It won Cersei her initial conflict with Marjorie, but it was also a very bad idea. Or later, when Marjorie is once again outmaneuvered what Cersei does is that she blows up the Grand Temple, which I think in the book, if that happened in the book, is going to have serious consequences for Cersei. It didn't really in the TV show because the showrunners were bored and wanted to move on.
Yeah, that's probably the fact that blowing up the Holy Basilica and also killing the Pope had basically no consequences for Cersei. Like Cersei, despite having been successfully dethroned and humiliated and utterly removed from power, was nevertheless allowed to be queen because there were no other named characters left.
Yeah, and
okay, but what about everyone had decided that she should not be queen, though. What about all of the unnamed knights in the background? Shouldn't they be putting her head on a pike and then squabbling over themselves who gets to be king now?
Yeah, and she has no claim to the throne. You can't inherit the throne via marriage, first of all. And also, they don't really talk about this on the TV show, but in the books, it's very explicit that the Iron Throne is not supposed to be inherited by a woman ever. Like, there's times in history where women have taken the throne, but it's like a lot of European monarchies where women were not supposed to be able to inherit the throne. Like you should have a war of Austrian succession type thing when Maria Theresa took the Austrian throne. Like, Cersei has no claim to the throne within the context of the Game of Thrones universe. Like, it's not even like she is the female descendant of somebody who was on the throne. She is not a descendant of anybody with a claim of the throne. She has no claim on the throne at all.
Yeah. It's the show kind of makes the assumption that with all the other named characters cleared away, she just wins by default. It's like, but what about all the unnamed characters? What about the thronging masses? She has no army. There is no one to protect her from peasants storming the palace.
I'm like, it could have been like a Wu Zetian thing where Wu was the wife of the emperor and managed to maneuver herself into being empress, even though she wasn't the child of the emperor. But Wu Zetian did a lot of work to maneuver herself into that position, where Cersei has undermined her ability to take that position. She should not be able to maneuver herself the way Wu Zetian did.
Yeah, no, Wu Zetian was exactly what Cersei isn't, a brilliant political manipulator, whereas Cersei is a dim-witted political manipulator who gets by on A, the privilege of her high birth, and B, having absolutely no regard for long-term consequences.
Yeah. Because you get the thing where, you read about Wu's reign, she terrorized the emperor's court with how ruthless she was, but outside of that, she seemed to have been a pretty effective ruler. Whereas Cersei, everyone hates her. The peasantry hates her also. She hasn't just terrorized the nobles in King's Landing. Everyone hates her.
Right.
It's always one of the things when you read about a ruler who gets really dragged through the mud sometimes. I always have the question, now were they actually a bad ruler, or were they just ruthless to the group of 400 nobles in the capital?
Yeah, because the literate classes were very small throughout most of history. So it is very easy. And even in very recent history, from the 1950s, while the lower classes could write, they rarely did. It's only very recently, with the age of the internet, that it is perfectly typical to find a blog that can give you an example, or, blogs, comments, forum posts, this kind of thing, that give you a good look at what, random Joe Blow is thinking. And even then, that got, after a very brief window, that got corrupted quickly by propaganda efforts, which have not, totally overwhelmed genuine opinion or anything, but, there is enough elite attempt to fake propaganda, or to fake common sentiment in places like comment sections, that you have to be on guard about that sort of thing. Is this what people really think? And, it is possible to arrive at the truth of that. You can look at polling numbers, you can, collate some data together and get an idea of what the common people really are thinking, but it does take a huge amount of effort. Elite opinions, on the other hand, even today, and especially back historically when commoners couldn't even write, elite opinions are much easier to get a handle on. So if a small handful of literate elites despise a ruler, that may be the only thing we know about them, despite the fact that it actually tells us very little about what their reign was actually like for the vast majority of people living under their rule.
That's sort of what has happened with some of the historiography around Wu, that sort of look at the evidence of her reign. It seems like her reign was actually pretty effective, even though the elites hated her for being a woman who had been able to take the throne. And she had been pretty ruthless in the process, but whoever took the throne was going to have been pretty ruthless.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is pretty clear that, the grievances of the people writing about Wu Jitian were both, A, pretty hypocritical. Any of them would have done the same thing. They're only angry because someone else did it to them when they wanted to be the person doing it to everyone else. And B, amongst all these people who all had various dreams and aspirations of being the emperor or being close enough to the emperor to, abuse that power, not only was it taken away from them, but who should take it from them but a woman? That's like adding insult to injury in ancient China. So, yeah, it is very much, our ability to exploit the lower classes has been robbed from us. How dare she? All evidence that we have of her reign suggested this was the case. I should be clear, we don't have a ton of evidence, so although the evidence is very one-sided, it is difficult to say for absolute certain, but... But yeah, so, there we are. I enjoy this game as a grimdark in the sense of the first definition we gave, of, so over-the-top dark that you can't really take it seriously. And anytime I get the feeling that, the creators are actually trying to have a serious dark fantasy setting, which I'm not totally certain on, either way, this is a Metroidvania game, right? It is ultimately all about just exploring a beautiful world with interesting gameplay. It does not require any kind of deep storytelling to it. I'm still on the wasteland of the buried churches, okay. So, I do kind of hold out hope that the creators were on the same page here. They thought the aesthetic was sort of beautiful and haunting, and they just sort of attached whatever minimum amount of story was necessary to give it the appropriate vibe and didn't really worry about it past that. Which, execution! See, if someone wrote execution animations into their game but still wanted it to be a deep meditation on the nature of human faith, then, that's not impossible, but... And that's not to say this game has literally nothing to say about religion. There is a sort of undertone. Am I going the wrong way? I think... No, this is the place I'm headed. I do think there is a sort of some kind of commentary underlying this about the way the Catholic Church, especially in the medieval and Renaissance eras, fetishizes suffering and martyrdom as, not just a noble reaction to unfortunate circumstances, but something to be sought out. I am ready, he says, and then immediately turns around and walks away.
Now, we should probably explain, I realize, why we are playing Blasphemous instead of Dragon Age, because I don't know that we... right. Because we said in Goblin Bat that we were going to go back to Dragon Age, and now we're playing Blasphemous.
We probably should. But, the short, boring answer is technical difficulties. Dragon Age was crashing randomly on us. It's weird that it took several episodes for that to show up, but it did, and once it started showing up, it was pretty incessant. I was able to edit around it in the first couple of episodes, but...
We tried some workarounds, and they... not really successful.
So you're supposed to be able to fix that by running it in compatibility mode, but that did not fix it for me, so... Not when I ran it in compatibility mode for Windows 7, not for Windows XP. Yeah,
the guys...
we have fallen, via technical difficulties, we have fallen from the shallows of Arkansas into the deeps, and must, now we must escape this hell.
Now, the guys with the candelabras, are they skeletons?
They definitely are now.
They kind of look skeleton-y, and I'm not certain whether to be frightened or not, because I'm not sure whether this is a horror or a fantasy setting.
It's definitely got elements of both. I guess if this is I may as well heal. I guess if this is a horror fantasy, then, you can just be, slightly anxious instead of full-on terrified. Is that...
Well, we're also not sure if they're skeletons or not.
So, yeah, maybe just a mild unease.
They're uncanny.
I'll be honest, I have no idea if that guy is just skeletal or particularly gaunt. Oh. Misjudged the distance on that one. I do. This game is really beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I love the aesthetic.
Okay, you on the bottom there need to not be a thing. There we are.
Being attacked by a floating cardinal, it looks like.
Yeah, he's real easy by himself. When he's got a friend on the ground, though, he gets annoying. But yeah, there's all this really beautiful, 15th century Catholic imagery. Specifically from Spain is the main area.
Are the developers Spanish?
Huh?
Are the developers Spanish?
I actually do not know.
Let me check my crystal ball. Spanish studio, The Game Kitchen.
That does make sense. Yeah, the pointy hat was a Catholic thing in Spain in particular, so that's where that comes from.
Yep.
Whoop. Crap. I remember you guys. See, there's actually a really common place you gotta pass through when you're running around for collectibles at the end of the game. So I fought these guys 8 billion times. Oh hey, this is new. There used to just be like this mysterious crack in the wall that you would just walk inside and there'd be this merchant guy in here. But yeah, now he's got like an actual shop.
Do not be surprised to find this merchant here. This ancient occupation.
I have not played this game since April of 2020, by the way, for and flying around. That is before both of the DLCs that have since been released for free, which means that I have them. But I have never played either of them before, so this game does still have a few surprises in store for me. Oh, also, I'm using the True Apostate skin because it looks the coolest. But for the record, I did get the ultimate good ending that gives you the Son of the Miracle skin. I just think it looks kind of dorky compared to the awesome purple and red True Apostate one.
What I am offering you here is as lustrous as the fair star of the night.
Cool. Give me a function and a price.
My eyes be blinded if I'm lying.
Your eyes may be blinded if you don't shut up and give me a function and price.
Protection against toxins, but too expensive.
What I am offering you, may my eye.
Maybe worth it.
Behold what I trust.
Oh yeah, I know where we can use that. It's a ways back, but we're going to need it eventually. Can never get the positioning on those ladder spikes right.
Does Super Metroid or Castlevania come out first?
Castlevania came out first, however, the first Metroidvania Castlevania.
Is Pose Metroid?
Yeah, it was Symphony of the Night. Symphony of the Night was a significant shakeup for the series. Prior to that, it had been a linear side-scroller. It had a lot of elements that adapted very well to Metroidvania. The limited range of the attack and the upgrade system and so forth all worked really well for a Metroidvania game, but initially they had been a totally linear series. You simply completed one level after another. Okay. I could get down there and fight these guys up close where they're tricky, or I could stand on the ledge and cheese them. I never claimed that I got good at this game by playing fair.
Going back and playing old RPGs, noticing how linear they are. Linearity is very frustrating. Like, it's understandable, but it's like, why do I have to do everything in order? A very specific order.
Right.
Give me a couple side quests, come on.
Especially, there's a lot of points where, you come to a point where the main plot needs some room to breathe. So you have some sort of episodic side plots starring a couple of party members for a bit. That's fine. But then they come in like a very specific order. Or it's like, you could have just had 3 of these, just be marked on the map somewhere, and then you could go chase after them in any order. The linearity is totally unnecessary. I'm low on health. And in theory, this little fight here shouldn't be too hard.
In practice,
provided that I can keep these guys separate from each other. None of these guys is hard individually, but if they all pile on top of me at once, then I can't keep track of all their tells. Alright, candelabra buddy. Now you're pressed up against the wall. That's nerve mismaking. Took care of him, though. Now I just gotta play ping-pong with this guy. See, and like those whip guys are really easy to fight on their own. They just charge right at you. You just smack them. But I'm so low on health now that they're making me nervous anyway.
You want me to see if Sorgalax will help us out?
I mean, I haven't even died once yet. You're jumping the gun here.
Alright. I don't know what else you have left to give him anyways.
I mean, he doesn't seem to have been particularly satisfied with any of our offerings, in that he never seems to actually help.
My name is Viridiana. I have been granted a gift with which I can assist.
So yeah, if necessary, this Viridiana here can help us with a couple of the boss fights. She visibly ages every time you accept her help. So, you know, I want to try and accept her help as little as possible, just because, you know, we don't want her turning into a hag. That would be awful.
Go back there and ask for her help. We need her to become a hag as quickly as possible.
Is there... I may as well check this place out. I forget what's over here. But if it's something that can help me out with the boss fight, then, you know, I may as well snag it before doing the hard part. Ah, no, it's a fast travel point. I'm only half paying attention to the game because I need to do commentary, so I'm going to miss so many collectibles. I don't think it will prevent me from getting the good ending, but some people at Albero may die while I'm not looking.
You'll need to understand that having to have a conversation while playing your game does actually affect your ability to play it. Like, after the World of Horror playthrough, which I barely beat, I went and did it on a higher difficulty and just aced it.
Yeah, it makes way more of a difference than you'd think. Like, it's kind of embarrassing, you know, going into a game. And obviously, it doesn't really matter whether or not you're good at video games, whatever. But it's still kind of embarrassing going into a game that you're actually really good at, and then just, like, clumsily staggering your way through because you're trying to have a conversation at the same time. Okay. So I did get a little bone, which is neat. These don't do anything, but they are collectible. There is an achievement for getting all of them, so, you know, neat, I guess. I don't really need any of these mea culpa upgrades for the boss. Yep, we're just going to get stuck in. What's up, 10 Piedad? I think this fight is not going to go as quickly as the one on the test recording, on account of I am no longer a god. Okay. Time to focus.
It's fine, it's fine.
That's how I get over him. Okay. Remembering how this fight works, guys. Of course, I have gone through both of my healing potions. And he is, like, less than a quarter dead, but,
I've never actually played Dark Souls.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely for a specific kind of gamer, but,
Like, I want my game to be difficult, but I don't like difficult to be the main selling point.
the difficulty of Dark Souls is exaggerated. Like, it's a hard game for sure. But, like, being hard is not like... You are not constantly being pummeled with the difficulty the way you are in a game like I Want to Be the Guy. Like, if you want a genuinely extreme challenge out of Dark Souls, then you have to do, like, special level 1 only challenge runs, stuff like that. You have a slower wind-up on that attack than I thought you did. And a longer range on that one than I thought you did. It's cool, guys. I'm going to figure out how this boss fight works again eventually. I've beaten him before, and not only in endgame god mode. Yeah. This might take me a couple of minutes, but that's fine. We'll probably wind up wrapping up on this boss right at the end of the episode, so that'll actually work out great.
An interesting thing from a literary criticism standpoint in this game is it's very steeped in Catholic imagery, but we're receiving it from a point of two people embedded in a very Protestant culture.
It's true. I mean, strictly speaking, my background is LDS, which is not, like, literally Protestant, but it's an American religion, which, you know, it grew up right next to Protestants. It's very familiar and similar to Protestantism in most ways.
Yeah, it comes out of Protestantism in the same way that Protestantism comes out of Catholicism. You can see the way Protestantism reacts to elements of Catholicism in the way that it doesn't to, like, Orthodoxy.
And fun fact, the character here is, like, not Protestant really, but they are some kind of religious minority sect.
Huh. It's like,
as we get deeper into it, you will find yourself confronted by defenders of the Orthodoxy frequently. They do not want you to succeed in your quest.
One of the things that gets talked about in modern literary criticism is how the reader receives text is as important as how the author intended it. We all have our experiences and our knowledge bases and our own biases that are going to affect how we receive a text, and one interpretation is not necessarily more correct than the other, even the author's. When I was in graduate school at one point, we were talking about the Fifth Monarchist movement in England, and for everyone in the class, it was sort of this weird religious sect that didn't have anything to do with anything modern, because they were all of, like, high Protestant or Catholic or Jewish. But Fifth Monarchism is very similar to sort of the evangelical Christianity that I grew up in. So for me, like, some of the stuff that's getting talked about seemed very intimately familiar. It wasn't, like, foreign. So, like, there was a different response from me than from the rest of the class. There was another person in the class who also grew up in an evangelical household, and she had a similar response as I did.
Okay, I guess
it's not that our responses were more correct, but it was we had a different understanding of this religious sect, right, since it was closer to our faith tradition.
Which does kind of get back into the idea that I have, you know, my interpretation of this. I don't think the miracle is a sapient entity. I don't think it actually has a will. You know, which is pretty obviously I mean, I wouldn't even necessarily say obviously. Nothing is obvious in this game. That might actually be the creator's intention. But, like, I feel pretty strongly that's not the creator's intention. I don't care because I like it anyway, and it doesn't contradict anything in the text. So.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Yeah, I'm back into a corner here. I gotta get out of here. Ah, you cheating bastard. You can't just trigger your attack while I'm in a corner. That attack isn't dodgeable in this corner. Do your lean anything. There is a moveset for this boss where theoretically, if he just repeats it often enough, it's undodgeable. And will eventually kill me with, long before I'll be able to wear away his health bar.
It's fine, it's fine.
He has to do the exact same moveset over and over, without ever doing the moveset that lets me break out of it. Not the moveset, but the move that lets me break out of it. So, it is hardly likely. Indeed, I think it may be hard-coded against it. There was a chance to break out of it that I missed there. That got me trapped in that corner. But, from a perspective of, the boss as a creature in the world, it's really only some combination of good sportsmanship and stupidity that gives me any chance at all of defeating this guy.
You can see some of the Catholic imagery, like the monster when we come into the room is very clearly posed like the Statue of La Pieta. Earlier in the very opening cutscene, when a woman is pierced by the sword, sort of looks like the ecstasy of Saint Teresa. I imagine we're going to see more imagery like this as we go along.
Oh yes, it is everywhere and it is fantastic. Real highlight of the game.
Well, it's all very much more macabre versions of all this classic Renaissance art.
Right.
Since the actual La Pieta, she's holding the dead body of Jesus, not some weird monster. And the ecstasy of Saint Teresa, she's being pierced with golden light.
That was not the right time to heal.
It's fine, it's fine.
Neither was that. There we go, out of the corner. But he got me with the thorns.
We did better that time.
Yeah, I'm getting the hang of it. I've beaten this guy before. It's been a while, but he hasn't been updated with the patches or the DLC or anything. This is definitely the same moveset. I just gotta remember how to beat him. So.
The dying a lot, how frustrating that is definitely heavily affected by how long the load times are. The load times on this are pretty short. I remember playing the Deus Ex on the Xbox 360, and the load times on that were excruciating. So if you died in that, it was very frustrating.
That does work on you. Why haven't I been using that? I should save it for your second half, though, when you're harder. Yep. Come on. There we go. Out of the corner. The corner is a dangerous place to be. You do not want to be in the corner.
Now, well, we're not going to be able to play Dragon Age, obviously. What we're obviously going to do when the new Dragon Age, which, according to reports, has been heavily influenced by Anthem, we're going to play that, of course.
Yeah, because that's the only way that we can, sort of like archaeologists studying one civilization for insights into their neighbors. By studying the new Dragon Age, we'll be able to get hints of what Anthem is like, despite the fact that nobody, including the developers, has ever played Anthem.
It might, it could legitimately be a good game. We don't know. No one does.
We just can't know for sure, but, we will get some clues based on the release of the new Dragon Age game, so that's very exciting.
It's like the Sea Peoples who invaded Egypt.
Right. They didn't leave any written record of their own, so we just have to glean what we can from what the Egyptians wrote about them. Ah, so close.
Again, I will never understand why you buy BioWare and then force them to make a looter shooter.
It is absolutely bizarre. I understand why you buy BioWare and have them making an MMORPG. It turned out to be a bad idea, but I can get why someone would think, oh, an MMORPG, that's basically just like, the super big boss monster form of an RPG. Surely BioWare, the really good RPG guys, can pull one of those off.
That's just an RPG with 3 extra letters.
Right. So, that was foolish, but I can see what the thinking was. But a looter shooter, that's a totally different genre. The only way someone could have come to that conclusion is if they are so ignorant of the industry they are, operating in, that they were like, looter shooters are a popular genre. BioWare is good at making video games, in general.
I mean, it's EA.
Yeah, let's not rule it out, but... the range on those thorns is always much longer than I think.
So what are those little cherubim?
It's not really clear. You can break a lot of them out of little glass cages lying around. And they seem to be important to our resurrection process somehow. But I have never been able to figure out, what they actually are. Most of the supernatural creatures in this... In fact, all of them that I can think of, besides the cherubim themselves, potentially, were caused by the grievous miracle, which is, an event allegedly caused by the impiety of the people of Custodia, whereby the High Pontiff turned his throne away from them and eventually turned into a tree, which is something the miracle likes to do a lot.
You sort of see it with this creature, that it's got
Right.
sort of arboreal elements.
There we go.
Don't think you're going to win this time.
I need one more bow flask. But yeah, eventually the High Pontiff was consumed by flame and turned into a pile of ash, atop which was his throne. All the followers raced to try and sit upon the throne, but they fell into the ash and emerged as these hideous monsters. That is the generic background for the monsters in the game. Some of them have more specific origins. The cherubim, though, it's not really clear. They definitely don't seem monstrous. Enemy versions never show up. Yes, please, just continue doing your super easily dodge attack over and over again, just forever. Thank you. Ah, you switched to the harder attacks. God damn you. I'm usually able to jump over that. I must have timed it wrong. Yeah, this, it doesn't become clear until much later in the game, but our penitent one here is a member of the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrow, which is some kind of heretical organization. You know, one of the enforcers of the Orthodoxy is not okay with us. In a prequel comic, it turns out that she is the one what killed us, which is why we were dead at the beginning.
I guess that explains it. I didn't realize we were dead at the beginning.
Yeah, you know, we're just lying on top of a bunch of bodies.
You would actually beat him. I should not have said that aloud.
Yeah. Why would you do that?
I have an idea. Hold on. I'm going to fix it. Alright, just wait 1 second. Great crone mother, I invoke thee. Lady of the dying world, queen of autumn and winter, she who rots the world with her steps. Child eater, mother of monsters, spill your dark progeny upon the planet. Let all know the fear of your power, of old age and senescence, of the end that comes to all things and the darkness that waits beneath the grave. She who offers sorrow, phantom queen, thousand-faced moon, I invoke thee. Alright, we should be good.
When has this ever helped?
But has it not helped?
The fight against Maleficent comes immediately to mind. I feel like it came up once in the vampire season, and I remember it not helping then as well. And we're definitely not off to a great start here. I'm pretty sure every time you try to invoke one of these, you know, terrible deities, you just anger them. Like, I don't know what it is, but they seem to really dislike you.
I think we both know perfectly well the only deity who dislikes me is Fortuna.
I mean, are we sure about that, though? Because none of these other ones ever seem to be eager to do you any favors.
At bare minimum, it should help us get through the depths of Arkansas.
This is fair, because this is apparently Hag World down here.
See, I told you it would work.
That was a coincidence.